And welcome everyone to an off-season chat with Luke Loucks, the new head coach of Florida State. And Luke, let's first macro here. Um, this, I think, came a little out of left field because people weren't, you weren't assuming that you would go back to Florida State. You're already in the NBA world, but times have changed in college basketball pretty rapidly, and they still are. So rather than just Florida State, or maybe it was only Florida State, what was the main reason you said, you know what? I'm going to leave the NBA world behind. I'm going to go back to college basketball.
Yeah, out of left field, one way to put it. I did not expect to coach in college. It was not on my radar. The first time I really thought about it was when Kevin Young took BYU, and I worked with Kevin in Phoenix with the Suns for a short time in between my stints with the Golden State Warriors and the Sacramento Kings. So I know Kevin well, and when he took the BYU job, and I knew he was up for some NBA jobs, I was like, huh, that's interesting, right? And so in the back of my mind it never really lined up like I'm going to go to Florida State and be the next head coach after Coach Hamilton, who I'm very close with. You know, he's a mentor of mine. We just didn't have those discussions because I was on a pretty good path and I enjoyed coaching the NBA and I loved what I was doing. But then once Coach Hamilton announced that he was going to step down after the season, those conversations started happening, both with Coach Hamilton. I'm sure he reached out on his own to several coaches who made sense. And then through the university, and then obviously I still have a lot of relationships in town with boosters and donors and people that are close with the program. So we started getting a little pressure, in a good way. And in any decision, I look at it in two ways. I look at it as you have your personal side, right? And then you have your career side. And for the personal side, my wife was an athlete at Florida State as well. She grew up in Florida. We've never lived close to family. We have three young kids, a 7, a 5, and almost 3-year-old. And we've always kind of been on our own, and on the West Coast. And so from the personal side, we thought about it, we prayed about it, and it made a lot of sense, get closer to family, be in an environment in college where it's a little less, it's still chaotic, but a little less chaotic than the NBA in terms of travel and schedule and how often you have to move around from city to city. And then career-wise, I always want to be a head coach. I think most young coaches strive to eventually call their own shots. And what a great opportunity to do that at a place that I'm so familiar with and with a lot of people I know and trust and in an area where I'm really comfortable with the administration and those that give. And to me, it just made a lot of sense. And going in the interview process, I was really excited. I was really excited about it. And as those conversations progressed, it became more and more clear that this was the right move.
So, as I said, it's a new era, and recruiting has completely changed. And it kind of feels a little bit more G League like, if you will, because there's a new roster almost every year, or at least almost a new core. You're pretty lucky if you can go year after year after year with the same, 6 to 7 players. So, um, at this point in your career and life, how much do you think the transition could be a little bit easier because you were kind of dealing with roster management in the NBA?
Yeah, it's definitely changed and it's continuing to change. New rules and regulations. I think it'll continue to evolve over the next few years. Now we're switching to the house and the rev share and the cap. And I would talk to college coaches all the time, just through relationships. They're like, it's the Wild West, and I'm like, that sounds normal, man. That sounds like everyone's making money, and yeah, there's egos and there's agents, and like that's what I'm used to. That's how the NBA is. Like you said, that's how the G League is. And even as a player, that's how I played professionally. I think Rick Pitino talked about it when he coached over in Panathinaikos in the EuroLeague that was normal. Roster turnover is normal, and you got to find a way to quickly assemble a roster that makes sense, that works well together. Every roster is a puzzle that you got to put together and you got to make the pieces fit. And then you quickly have to integrate your basketball philosophy and mesh all of these big personalities to be a little more selfless, right? Lose your ego at the door. Everyone's got an ego, but try to help a teammate, right? And all of those things to me right now is what we're dealing with in college basketball. So I guess a lot of the chaos, it still seems a little chaotic, but this is pretty normal for those that come from professional sports.
And you can say, hey, here's how you get to the NBA. Here's how you play professionally overseas. Here's how you play, G League, and here's how you can get a two-way and 10-day and all those kinds of things. How much do you think that will help you, not just in the recruiting process, but in the sort of mentor process, coaching process with your players?
Yeah, that's a big part of our recruiting pitch right now. We're not in a position currently, and we're actively fundraising, but we're not in a position currently where we're going to outspend, the Dukes and the Louisvilles and those that just have all the resources going to basketball. We're a football school, and I love being a football. I'm a big football guy. I hope our football team does well. But the reality is, we have to be creative with the way we recruit, and that's the way I filled my staff not only from myself, like you said, I know what it takes to not only get to the NBA, but then hopefully for all my student athletes to stick in the NBA, where you can make second and third and fourth contracts, and that's where real money starts coming in. So in terms of, not only myself, I have several members on our coaching staff that have ran draft workouts, that have conducted interviews at the combine, that have interviewed players and worked with players as they progress from their G League to a two-way contract, to a rookie contract, to a second contract. So we know what it takes. And there's no better place in America to come and get that in terms of a stepping stone from college to professional sports. I can't promise every player on my roster is going to make the NBA because I'll be lying, right? But I can promise we're going to maximize whatever talent you have, and we're going to try to get you paid at this level and the next.
So if I said, okay, there's a Florida State team coached by Leonard Hamilton, um, I would right off the bat say they're going to defend, they're going to rebound, they're going to be really hard to play against, they're probably going to be really long. Uh,
Yeah.
so that's what I would assume a Leonard Hamilton team would look like. What will yours look like at Florida State?
Yeah, it'll be a little bit different. Obviously, I like defense. I came up under some of the best defensive coaches in the world in basketball in terms of Coach Hamilton and Mike Brown in the NBA, and even Steve Kerr is an offensive guy. But if you look at all those championship teams, every year we were top two or three in the NBA in defense, and so defense will be a staple of mine. But our teams will be built a little bit differently. Just the style of play, I want to play super fast. I want to shoot a lot of threes. I want to get a lot of offensive rebounds. I enjoy multi-positional basketball where a player can play any position from 1 through 4, and they have the skill. Everyone can pass, dribble, and shoot. Everyone can make quick decisions. But the pace at which I want to play with proper spacing and cutting and ball movement would mirror a little bit more of the NBA game. And I'd say a couple teams have done it pretty well. Nate Oates being one of them at Alabama, and the staffs he's built with NBA staffs that Nate would come to some of our training camps when I was in Phoenix, and but those even KY, and even Todd Golden back when he was at USF coming up as an assistant coach would come to our Golden State practices. Those guys have, it's not a complete NBA system, but influences from the NBA, and they've had a lot of success offensively. So I would say that's the path I'm going to take without getting into too much philosophical detail of offense. And then defense, there are some similarities to Coach Hamilton. He definitely preferred an extreme amount of length, which length is always good on defense. I would err on the side of a lot of ball pressure, which he loved as well. A little less denying and a little more protecting the paint, right? Some of Coach Hamilton's defense were so exceptional because you could pressure the ball, you could deny everywhere, and then you always had a 7-footer behind the play.
Yeah.
Uh, I would consider my defense as not pack line, but a little more. We're going to pressure and we're going to disrupt, but then behind the play, we're going to shift in gaps and make sure that ball doesn't get into the paint, and so we don't have to rely on those shot blockers. So definitely some similarities to Coach Hamilton and definitely some differences.
All right, last thing for you. Um, the ACC has completely changed.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, literally, Hall of Famers have exited. Duke's obviously got it rolling. I'd say after that, it's pretty wide open. Like if you told me it was a different team that finished second next year, or not handing it to Duke, but there's a rotation. We've already, Miami was in the Final Four a couple of years ago. You guys, as a program, have won the ACC. Louisville had a great year last year. There's been a rotation of teams in this league. Obviously, North Carolina. So, in terms of a time to get into the ACC, I think this is the right time. What are your thoughts of jumping into this right now?
Well, Andy, you can hand it to Duke because you have a family bias, so that everyone knows that it's well documented. No, John's done an incredible job, and Duke's Duke, and I think that we talked about it at the ACC head coaches meetings. Those that invest in their sport, obviously we're caring about basketball right now. Those that invest are going to usually get the best results. That's the way life works. And Duke, Louisville, Carolina, Clemson, like those are the schools that have invested heavily in basketball. But now you have a new wave, which is exciting. You got NC State and Will taking over there, and they're going to invest. Virginia and Coach Odom, yeah, I think he's done an incredible job. And a lot of these guys, what's crazy is like Coach Odom recruited me at Virginia Tech under Seth Greenberg, and so we talked about those conversations. And a lot of these guys in the room, I have a
His
tremendous amount.
father did.
Yeah, his
Yeah.
father. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And the family
Yes.
and Miami and Lucas, like they're pouring into their program. So I think, and I know I'm missing, you talk about Steve Ford, like all these guys, they may not be Coach K and Roy Williams, but these guys are really good coaches. And to me, it's exciting that there's a new wave and a new energy behind the ACC. We saw the SEC pour into their basketball teams, and you saw the results, right? And now the ACC is like, guys, we're a basketball conference. We need to get back to our roots. And I think you're seeing that not only with the hires, but with the amount of money that's being poured into some of these teams.
Yeah. Hey, I don't hear from Brad Burnell. Clemson's been a mainstay of late. So can't forget about Clemson. Obviously, they got to the Elite Eight a couple of years ago. So Brad's doing a great job as well. Hey, Luke, thrilled you're back in the college game and look forward to chatting with you and tracking how the Seminoles do.
Andy, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.